So this will be our first stop on our coffee crawl in Lisbon, and I thought this would be a good place to start at A Brasileria because this is definitely the most famous coffee house in all of Lisbon, maybe in all of Portugal. This is where a lot of people give credit for coffee becoming popularized in Portugal. You know, coffee was well known in Portugal in the late 1700s, early 1800s. It was known, but it wasn't popular. The Portuguese didn't drink a lot of coffee then, even though it had been in Portugal for many, many decades. Portuguese, during the Age of Discoveries, they colonized places like Angola, and as coffee spread around Europe, they discovered places like Angola and Mozambique were great for growing coffee beans, and then Brazil. So they made coffee plantations, and it should be mentioned, they had slaves working those coffee plantations in Brazil. And they tried to export coffee beans to Portugal and popularize it, and for decades it didn't work. Portuguese did not like coffee. But what happened was here, A Brasileria, it was called something else at the time, but here they were a wholesaler of coffee beans, and they were trying to sell coffee beans to people. And the business was, in essence, failing. It wasn't working out because the Portuguese didn't like coffee. So what the owner did was he would make coffee, and he would say, with every bag of coffee beans you buy, you get a free coffee. So that's what he would do. Still, it didn't get popular. And the reason was because Portuguese like their sweet drinks. Think of port wine. It's a very sweet drink. Coffee, on the other end of the spectrum, it's very bitter. So because of that, it wasn't very popular. But you add in your sugar. So the legend has it, I never add sugar to my coffee, but for the sake of demonstration here at A Brasileria, I'm doing so. Because what they used to say was, add sugar to your coffee and you'll enjoy it. And I guess that made it more palatable to the Portuguese because coffee took off here in the early 1800s, and now Portuguese drink so much coffee. And you can really credit the folks at A Brasileria. They got rid of their wholesale coffee business, and now they've got this gorgeous cafe where everybody comes to enjoy Bica. So we're sitting outside at A Brasileria, but inside it is absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the most beautiful cafes in all of Lisbon, maybe in all of Portugal. It's really gorgeous, but today's a perfect day here in Lisbon. So we're sitting outside and doing it much like Pessoa did. He was probably one of Portugal's most famous poets, and back in the day, 100 years ago, he used to sit here because this was the place where all the intellectuals used to sit, where the great thinkers and the minds and the artists and the writers would come and discuss lofty ideas about the future of Portugal. And Pessoa came here and he would drink coffee. Sometimes he'd drink something stronger, the Green Fairy. But he would sit here and he would talk with friends and he would write. And he would write and he would write and he would write. And his most famous poem is called The Message. And it's so famous it's been translated into many languages. And if you want to get a copy, you can go inside here at A Brasileria. They've got copies translated into many different languages, including English. You can get your Portuguese version too, but several other languages too. And they've got this great statue of him sitting there with his legs crossed, probably enjoying a coffee and thinking about the ideals of Portugal and his next poem. So this is a place to come. I don't think you're going to see any poets here in this day and age. Mostly it's tourists, but it's a gorgeous place to come and spend an afternoon and enjoy your coffee and maybe one of these sweet tarts. I mean, I just couldn't pass this thing up. Look how absolutely gorgeous this is. There's a little fruit tart, and so it's a meringue on the outside. It's not a phyllo dough crust. So they got a meringue, and then it looks like a little cream cheese, and then topped with berries. Oh my God. That is so good. Holy cow. And look at the cute little presentation they got with this. Terrific. Sweet, go with your uma bica. Fantastic. So this is Pasteleria Bernard, and it's just a couple doors down from a Brasileria in Chiado, so you can try both if you want when you come here. This place has been around since the 1860s, so it's even older than a Brasileria, but it didn't start out as a coffee house because, like I said, in the mid-1800s, coffee was known in Portugal, but it wasn't very popular. So this place started as a tea house. Now you can get nice coffees here. They also serve food. And I like this place because it's got this French vibe to it. You got French doors, they got the wood, they got posters back there of Antibes. So you really get a French vibe when you're sitting here. It's a really gorgeous coffee shop. What I thought we'd get here is a couple real examples of Portuguese coffee. So when you come to Portugal, if you're not an espresso drinker, if you like American coffee, you might be tempted to order something called an Americano. In most of Europe, an Americano means just a regular American-style coffee. In Portugal, it means that, yes, but it also means freeze-dried crystals with hot water. So if you ask for an Americano, you may get Nescafe, and that's probably not what you want, right? So what you want to order is something called abatinado, and that's what this is. It's like an American style. You see, you get a bigger cup, there's more water in it. That's what you get. And for folks who aren't used to espresso, who find it too strong, maybe an abatinado is the way to go. Next to it, I got the classic Portuguese coffee milk drink. This is called a galao. And you might think of this as similar to a cappuccino, but really, cappuccino is basically half coffee, half steamed milk. Galao is closer to 1/4 espresso, 3/4 steamed milk, so it's much milkier. I don't get this very often, but it's a nice treat to have, and that's nice, foamy. And it's really, in Portugal, it's a drink that you get in the morning. We're a little bit afternoon here, so they might be kind of rolling their eyes at me for ordering this drink in the afternoon, but so be it. Galao is widely drunk throughout Portugal, and I really enjoy it a lot, but like I said, I usually only get it for special occasions because it is pretty rich with all the milk. This place is nice because they have soy milk, so I didn't have to get the cow's milk. And it's pretty tasty. So, Pasteleria Bernard, nice place to come visit. Good coffee and great atmosphere. So we're headed to our next location down in the Bica of Lisbon, but I wanted to give you a quick tip. If you're coming to Lisbon, make sure you use the mass transit system. The metro system, the underground, the subway, it's called the metro here, is really good at connecting the city. The tram system is also quite good, but even if you don't buy a metro ticket, you can still use it to your advantage. Let's say you're down in the Bica and you want to come up into Chiado. You will have to climb a bunch of hills, steep stairs, If you come in the summer, you will be beat, you will be sweaty, your knees will be aching, your calves will be tired. But you can save yourself a ton of walking by taking this series of 4 escalators from the Bica all the way up to Chiado, or the other way around. You can go down from Chiado down into the Bica. It's a great little thing, and it's free. You just walk right through the hallway of the metro. You don't have to buy a ticket, and you go up or you go down. It's an excellent way to get from one of the highest points in the city to one of the lowest points in the city. So try it when you get here, not only at the Bica Chiado station, but several of the other stations in Lisbon have this as well, and it makes things really convenient when you're walking around. We're at Cafe Nicola in Lisbon, and this is a busy spot right on Rocio Square. You can see all the traffic, the buses going on behind me. So it might get a little bit loud, but the weather's really nice today, so I thought it'd be a nice day to sit outside and enjoy our coffee. Cafe Nicola, this place has been around since 1929, and it's really beautiful outside and inside as well. I wanted to come here because they got a bunch of pictures of Bocage on the inside, and Bocage, you know, he's super famous in Setúbal, the town where we live, but I didn't think he was as popular here in Lisbon. But then I remembered he spent some time here in Lisbon, biggest city in Portugal. Setúbal is definitely not the biggest city in Portugal, so probably needed to get out and sell some of his poems and his writing, and Lisbon would be the place to come, so people know about him here. But in Setúbal, I mean, he's super famous. They named the main square after Bocage. There's a statue of him right in the middle, and his archives are there, and you know, people know about Bocage. There's even a Bocage Day in Setúbal, but it's kind of nice to find out that they celebrate Bocage here in Lisbon as well. So our coffee's here, and of course I couldn't pass up a pastel de nata as well. So what I got was called a café com gelo, just means coffee with ice, and iced coffee isn't really a thing in Portugal, and I'm kind of surprised that the way this came was with the ice in the coffee. Generally, when you ask for a café com gelo, what happens is you get your espresso and then you get a cup of ice on the side. But this came with the ice cubes in it, and I think, yeah, the coffee's not hot. So a lot of times what you get is you get a hot espresso, you get the ice, you pour the cafe into the ice, and it immediately melts, and what you get is kind of a lukewarm with maybe a little bit of ice in it. I think what happened is they brewed this coffee and either refrigerated it, let it come to room temperature, whatever, and added the ice in. So they made it what I consider to be the correct way, and I'm surprised because I've never seen it made this way in Portugal before, so I'm really happy with this. That's really nice, and of course they brought along the cinnamon to go on top of your pastel de nata. Nice. Wow, really happy with my Café com Gelo. So I'm going to sit here and enjoy this and just watch the world go by while we have it. So we're at Conchirino Nacional, our next stop. I know at the last place, Nicola said I was going to show you some of the pictures of Bocage in there. They must have 6, 8 pictures of big paintings, large format paintings of Bocage in there. But the guy scolded me when I took out my camera, so I couldn't take any pictures. All I could take was a picture of the statue that they have of Bocage in there. I guess you'll have to trust me that they got some nice pictures in there. Anyway, this place has been around since 1829, almost 200 years. And this is really one of my favorite coffee houses in all of Lisbon. Whenever we have friends come to visit, this is a place I always take them to because I love the interior of this. It looks like kind of an Italian fancy coffee shop, maybe almost Viennese. I love the decoration in here, and they serve up good food too. So it's a really, really good place. Now, what did I get? I got something called a pingado. I had to take a little sip out of there so that I can tilt the cup for you to see it. Pingado is an espresso with a little foamed milk on top. So it's sort of like a cappuccino, but it's really just a shot of espresso and a little bit of foamed milk on the top. So not as much milk as a cappuccino, not nearly as much. And this place is nice because they have plant-based milk in addition to cow's milk. So that's what I got. That's nice. And then I got this little tart. Now this is a, I think this is the mushroom and spinach tart I got. So it's just a quiche with mushroom and really nice. So when you come here, you're coming for the atmosphere. It's really one of the most gorgeous cafes. Food is pretty good too, and one of my highest recommendations is to come to this spot. Our next stop is the Martinho de Arcada. This is a coffee shop right off of the Prosido Commercial. Prosido Commercial is one of the most popular tourist spots in all of Lisbon. You'll see tons of tourists moving through here. It's because a lot of cruise ships dock here. It's also a very famous area as well. And it's a good place to see, but the Prosido Commercial is lined with what I think are real tourist trap restaurants. So I've avoided coming to this place. I kind of walk by it all the time, but I didn't realize how cool it is and also the history involved. If you learn about Pessoa, my buddy right here, you'd think that the only coffee house that he hung out in was a Brasileria, but he hung out here all the time. In fact, they even had a reserved table just for him. So this is if you want to do the Pessoa crawl and see where he was hanging out, this is definitely a place to stop. It's also a nice coffee shop. They've got great pastries and whatnot here. I got a little coffee, Carasoa. Okay, so Carasoa, this is like an espresso, but it's made with the second run of the beans. So if you imagine, you grind the espresso beans, you pound them in, and you run them through the machine. Then instead of taking the grounds and pouring them out, you run another thing of water through it and make a second cup of coffee. So this is weaker than a regular espresso. It also doesn't have the same bitterness. So if you come here and you find Portuguese coffee too bitter, and some people do, this might be the coffee that you want to have because it's much smoother and still you get it in your nice little espresso cup. What a great place this is. I mean, we're here in the middle of the day and it's all locals just hanging out here. Workers, guy from the GNR, which is the National Guard, is hanging out here. He's getting an espresso at the counter. This is a great spot, right in the middle of the tourist action, yet it kind of feels like we're a world away. This is Cafe Versailles, and when you walk in here, you'll probably have the same reaction that I did and think that this is a really old Lisbon cafe, but in actuality, this place has only been here like 30 years or so. But the owners came in and they wanted to design it based on an old-looking French cafe, and boy, did they ever succeed. It's got this long bar with a beautiful display case, and what you see is that you got locals here all lined up, standing there, eating their lunch. It's a locals place. We've been to a ton of places today that were filled with tourists, but this is definitely a locals place. People coming in for lunch during the workday. So it's lunchtime. We came in and we got a little bit of lunch, and so I got some eggs, and it comes with French fries, of course, and then a little tomato. But the coffee drink that I wanted to get here is called the Marzigan, and this is a drink that originated in Angola, which, if you know your history, was a Portuguese colony. And this drink, you know, Angola is very hot, so they needed a drink to cool down with in Angola. They didn't want hot coffee, they wanted something cold. So they developed this drink, the Marzigan, and this is a coffee with tonic water and lemon. And typically it also has mint, like the muddle the mint in it. If you know a mojito, it would be similar to that. This one is more like an iced coffee. That's the thing, everyone's got their own spin on the Marzigan. These guys, less tonic water, more like an iced coffee with lemon juice. There's definitely not any mint in there either. So you might think, lemon with coffee? Are you out of your mind? But this was what they used in Angola to cool off in the hot summertime. And you'll see this in bars and coffee houses in Lisbon. It's not really all that popular, but you do see it on menus. You will see locals drinking this. So I wanted to give it a try today, just so that you would see what it's like. Is it my favorite coffee drink in all of Lisbon? No, not really, but it's interesting because it's nice and refreshing. And we'll give a try to this omelet as well. This is an omelet with asparagus. And if you saw my video in Evora, you know that I love the omelet with asparagus. Actually, they do scrambled eggs with asparagus. This is a little different because it's an omelet. All right, so Domingos in Evora, he still is the king of eggs and asparagus. This one's not bad though. It's really pretty good. And I got my French fries with it. I got my tomatoes, my carrots. It's really nice. And I'll have a little cold coffee. If you want to get away from the tourists but still see what is a beautiful cafe, come here during lunchtime. You're going to run into locals. You'll have fun. It's Versailles. So for our last stop, we're getting a Cafe Conchirino. We're in the São Bento neighborhood, and I haven't spent a lot of time in this neighborhood, but Karen wanted to come here because, like, 2 doors down, there's this tiny, tiny little Mexican grocery store. And we needed to get some nice tortillas, some corn tortillas, some dried chilies, some mole, some cactus leaves. So we got all that stuff, loaded up her bag, and I wanted to get this drink. I asked for it in a couple other places, but none of the fancy cafes that we went to had it. But I found this place, and oh my God, this place is so cool. It's Cafe Conspirazo, basically the conspiracy cafe or the plot cafe. I don't know why. I don't know why it has that name. But basically what this is a espresso with a shot of Aqua Dent. And if you've never had Aqua Dent before, you are in for a treat. Aqua Dent is basically Portuguese moonshine. It's similar to grappa or moonshine. It's made from the leftovers of the winemaking process. You distill the grape skins, the stems, the seeds, all of that stuff into a powerful liqueur, and it's called Aqua Dent, and that's what they add into it. So if you think of like a Sambuca in your coffee when you go to Rome, or even maybe an Irish coffee, although it's not as fancy as that, but you know, getting a little liqueur in your coffee. That's kind of what this idea is. So a little Aqua Dent in my espresso, in my cafe. I'm telling you, man, Aqua Dent is fire water. Even though it's not as high in alcohol as grappa, this stuff puts hair on your chest. I really can't drink it straight because it's much too powerful. We've even tried to make limoncello out of Aqua Dent, and it doesn't work. It just overpowers the lemon flavor. It's not very good. But in here, first of all, just when he set it down, you could smell like the Aqua Dent is coming up here. You can smell it, and then you bring it up to your nose, and you're like, oh yeah, that's got some strong liqueur in it. And after 6 or 7 coffees today, I need a little Aqua Dent to kind of smooth things out a little bit. I never drink this much coffee in a single day. So anyway, that's what we're having at the Conspiracy Cafe, Aqua Dent and coffee. How do I like it? I gotta say, it's really kind of nice, and here's why. The Aqua Dent mellows out the bitterness of the coffee, and the coffee mellows out the harshness of the Aqua Dent. So they work together. It's kind of a yin and a yang. It's a peanut butter and jelly of coffee drinks in Portugal. I like it. Would I drink it every day? Probably not. So that's it for our coffee crawl here in Lisbon, and what a great way to finish it off with a Cafe Conchirino here at the Conspiracy Cafe. Maybe I figured out why they call it the Conspiracy Cafe. You have a couple of these, and maybe you believe in Area 51, maybe you believe in the flat earth, maybe you believe that they didn't actually land on the moon, that it was done on a Hollywood movie set in 1969. I don't know, but after a few of these, you might believe anything. And the one thing I did want to mention about this is, this was like 80 cents, okay? So I asked him how much it was. My Portuguese, our friends make fun of us and they say we speak like 2-year-olds. My comprehension is getting better, but I didn't quite understand what he was saying because I was anticipating a shot of liqueur and espresso. He was going to charge me like €5 and something, or 6 or 7 euros. And I only had €5 in my pocket and some change. So I gave that to him and I was like, is it okay? And I thought that was it. I came out and he came out with all this change. And then I realized that he said 80 cents is what he was charging. I mean, unreal. But where can you get a shot of liqueur and a coffee for 80 cents? So anyway, to wrap up, obviously coffee is a huge part of coming to Lisbon, of coming to Portugal in general. The cafe culture is unbelievable, and I've taken you to some of my favorite spots, some of the most popular tourist spots. I would say a couple of things. First of all, of the places we went to, yes, you have to go to a Pasteleria, just because it's so legendary. But I would say don't miss out on Martinho either, because you'll be down by Prosido Commercio when you come to Lisbon. So go to that place. It's really cool. And then mostly I would say get yourself into some of the neighborhoods. Like I said, the São Bento neighborhood, haven't really been here before, stumbled upon this place. Now you don't have to come necessarily to the Conspiracy Cafe. You ought to. It's pretty freaking awesome here. But just find a local spot. Look where the old guys are hanging out playing cards or playing backgammon. And then you will definitely have a fun time. And it's inexpensive, and you can really sit for as long as you want. Once you buy a coffee, don't feel the pressure. I always felt this in America. Like, you feel the pressure. Once you finish your coffee, you better get out because they're looking to turn over the table. Here, they don't care. Sit as long as you want. I've sat in places. There goes a motorcycle. I've sat in cafes for a couple hours. You know, I'll sit there and I'll have a coffee, and a friend will drop by and they'll sit and they'll have a coffee with me, and then maybe they have somewhere else to go and I'm still working on my coffee, and then another friend stops by. And that's perfectly all right. That's perfectly considered within the realm of manners here. You can hang out for as long as you want, and that's part of the cafe culture here in Portugal, and that's what makes it such a charming country and what makes Lisbon such a great place to visit.